There's a certain quality to the work of Kelly Reichardt that is hard to put into words, a feeling of carefulness, patience, something lost and something gained, connecting you to the loneliness of the world in a way that simultaneously enriches and depletes any feeling you have. It's the image of old friends trying to fill the silence with nostalgia, of a woman sleeping in the quiet threat of a forest at night, completely alone, a ranch owner earnestly waiting in an empty classroom for the woman she loves, the joy of a loose pigeon flying in an art gallery. Sometimes saying nothing can be more powerful than any words. Reichardt's filmography captures the interiority of people who are rarely the recipients of attention, lending her voice to those who aren't typically seen. By staying true to her roots of independent filmmaking and remaining free from Hollywood's aggressive input, she's touched upon something that no one else has, that sometimes it's better to be selective, to be slow, to listen. When describing the stillness that is often associated with her work, Reichhardt described it as not static, but deliberate. The use of this word is important, because stillness implies passivity, something unmotivated and objective. But the stillness in Reichardt's films is emotionally demanding. The gaze of a camera lingers on someone's face as it's about to fall apart, a feeling moving to the surface. The stillness is built into the landscape of the mountains, lakes and forests, a character that is unmoved by the pain of the people around them, still in their detachment from the people who are often left behind. Silence can be the best judge of character, a way of knowing that you're truly comfortable around someone. It can be an olive branch, the silent acknowledgement after an argument when you realize you were in the wrong. It can be a reflection, thinking about something that makes you look at the world in a new way. It can connect you with the people around you, knowing when to speak and when to listen. It's a form of compassion, a way of giving someone space, a way of learning and letting go. But in recent times, we've become obsessed with avoiding and filling silence. If something isn't overstimulating our brain, then we don't want it. We lose patience and label it as boring. However, the work of Kelly Reichardt and slow cinema in general revolves around silence, creating a feeling of openness and ambiguity that allows the spectator to see their own lives and unspoken experiences of others within the stillness, something that is being lost to mainstream audiences through our growing impatience with realism on screen. While silence and stillness in Reichardt's work is often dismissed as being unmotivated, her minimalistic style is thematically rich and intentional, with each film existing in conversation with the other as their collective silence critiques a wider issue. Whether it be Old Joy, Wendy and Lucy, or Certain Women, each film centers around characters who have been dehumanized by capitalism and the American dream, either becoming isolated through their achievement of capitalist values or their lack of conformity, something that is heightened when paired with Reichardt's exploration of rural and urban America and gender identity. By pairing these thematic devices with her signature stillness and silence, Reichardt's work provides a voice for those on the margins of society and raises a larger question about the true meaning of silence, pointing towards a wider message not only about the future of slow cinema, but the demise of humanity itself. Welcome back to Pompous Unhelpful Knit, and to my deep dive on how Kelly Reichardt hijacked Hollywood. A philosophy of excess has long been ruling the film industry at large, but it's not one that has reached the world of Kelly Reichardt. She's one of the few filmmakers who has embraced the creative possibilities that come from working with restrictions, creating a truly unique way of working that not only offers her more freedom, but actually enhances the kinds of stories she creates. After growing up in suburban Florida with parents who were both police officers, Reichardt developed an early interest in photography after using her dad's crime scene camera, which later turned into a passion for filmmaking. As a child, witnessing the political turbulence and corruption within America had a huge impact on her future films, recalling, "As a child, I remember being in the pool at this pool party and having to get out of the pool to watch Nixon resign. My first idea of a president was of a guy who was a crook. You have to have some matter of dissatisfaction in order to be asking questions, or just acknowledging the complexity of the world and how fucking chaotic it is." While studying art at the School of the Museum of Fine Arts, she made a trilogy of short Super 8 films and began her professional filmmaking career after graduating. Her first job was working in the art and costume department on Todd Haynes' 1991 film Poison, who quickly became a close friend and key creative collaborator. It was just 4 years later that she made her first feature film, River of Grass. It was described by Reichhardt as a road movie without the road, a love story without the love, and a crime story without the crime, following a Florida housewife called Cozy who goes on the run with a man after thinking they've committed murder. It was through this project that Reichhardt was harshly introduced to the patriarchal hierarchies of the film industry, relentlessly fighting for a tiny budget of $40,000 that was nearly impossible to find as a first-time female director. But securing financing was just the first hurdle, and Reichhardt was met with more uphill battles during production and the constant fight to have her ideas and authority taken seriously. I had written this script, lived with it and raised the money, yet I still had to go to the set each day and defend my post as director. It was the first time in my life that I was like, oh, I get it, this is happening because I'm a female. I fought for every shot of my film, which is such a drain and something I wasn't prepared for. The film was initially rejected by Sundance Film Festival for being too short, and was only accepted after Reichhardt slowed down the credits to meet the minimum runtime. It went on to win the Grand Jury Prize, and was described as one of the best films of the year. This type of working process has defined the entirety of Reichardt's career, working independently from the studios that rule the industry, and by doing so, creating her own definition of success. When describing her mode of filmmaking, Reichhardt said, "I want to not have to go through development, to not have to deal with agents, to not have to deal with lawyers, to not have to show anybody my script, to not have to read script notes when I really don't want them, to not have anyone look at a cut of my film and then give notes when I really don't want them." But while she was undoubtedly successful in the sense that she could make her films on a radically low budget, maintain full creative control, and eliminate any external interference, the tough reality was that this success wasn't enough to earn funding for another film, with Reichhardt struggling to do so for 12 years before her next feature. This was also compounded by the fact that her next script, The Royal Court, featured a black woman as the lead character, which proved impossible to find funding for at the time. While it might have been the end for The Royal Court, which was sadly shelved after a decade of searching for financing, it wasn't the end of Reichardt's filmmaking career. Reichhardt was introduced to writer John Raymond through their mutual friend Todd Haynes, forming a lifelong working relationship after adapting one of his short stories for her next film. Unsurprisingly, the film had 2 white male leads, characters that proved easier to find funding for, and she managed to acquire a small budget by pooling together external investments with some money she earned through working in the art department of America's Next Top Model. This now brings us on to the next chapter of this essay, where we'll be looking at 3 of Reichardt's films in more detail, starting with her sophomore feature, Old Joy. Directed in 2006, Old Joy follows 2 old friends who spontaneously reunite for a hike one weekend, slowly realizing that they no longer have anything in common and their friendship has faded. Mark is a more traditional Type A character and on the cusp of becoming a father for the first time. He has a steady job, a house, and a fairly average life. Kurt is a nonconformist and free spirit, with no real job or responsibility to tie him down. He's a bit of a drifter, and somebody who hasn't achieved any of these traditional milestones, with no partner, child, job, or permanent home. It is through their differences that Reichhardt explores the clashing of old and new values. Mark and Kurt are the personification of traditional versus modern masculinity, with Reichhardt suggesting that neither leads to true freedom or happiness, as the values at both ends of this spectrum are ultimately isolating and dehumanizing. Mark is dehumanized through his achievement of these capitalist values, and Kurt's lack of conformity to them only makes him lonely, something that we slowly learn throughout the course of their hike. The difference between natural and modern spaces plays a huge role in exploring the dynamic between Mark and Kurt, with their relationship being reflected through the changing landscape they journey through. They begin in the city, shortly driving through industrial wastelands, energy plants, and rundown gas stations. The commercial bleakness of this environment reflects the strained state of their friendship and sparsity of intimacy between them, with the pair engaging in small talk about safe topics and reminiscing over the past, with nostalgia being the only thing they still have in common, aka Old Joy. Their journey into the woods is an attempt to tether themselves to something real, to find meaning and fulfillment from the earth despite how it's been corrupted. But as they journey deeper into the Oregon forest and become more at one with nature, they sink into a deeper state of authenticity and truthfulness when stripped of all modern distractions, only highlighting the growing gulf between them. This unique emotional space culminates in the campfire scene, with the pair having a painful conversation after setting up their tent next to a rubbish dump. They're in a very intimate setting. It's night, they're sleeping in a 2-men and a doggy tent, and are the only people in sight. However, the intimacy of the setting only makes the lack of familiarity between them more pronounced, with Kurt eventually confronting Mark about the demise of their friendship and how he wishes things would go back to how they used to be.
I miss you, Mark. I miss you really, really bad. I want us to be real friends again. There's something between us, and I don't like it. I want it to go away.
Man, what are you talking about? We're fine.
Are you serious? Do you really think that?
Of course. Of course I do. We're fine. We're totally fine.
I don't know.
This has been an unspoken source of tension throughout the hike so far, but Kurt is desperately trying to reanimate their friendship, even though their respective conformity and resistance to capitalist values is what drove them apart, with a reminder of the destructiveness of this system sitting right next to them in the form of the dump. But while the environment is an important backdrop to their fading friendship, perhaps even more important is Reichardt's exploration of gender identity through the masculine ideals both characters embody. Gender roles are ultimately dehumanizing, and for Kurt and Mark, they cannot connect as people due to embodying clashing versions of masculinity. In Man and Masculinities, Michael Kimmel argues that manhood is equated with power, over women, over other men. To Mark, Kurt represents a man who has failed to live up to societal expectations of man, and because of this, he holds no power. If he allows himself to reconnect with Kurt in the way that he wants, to fully open up and allow himself to be vulnerable, then he will be relinquishing his own power by sinking to his version of masculinity. He doesn't reciprocate Kurt's vulnerability during the campfire scene, deflecting away from an uncomfortable truth and maintaining his power by doing so. But this is most interestingly explored during the hot spring scene, with the pair reaching the final destination of their hike and being challenged by the somewhat homoerotic nature of the baths. Kurt has been there before, and so he has slight authority and power over Mark in showing him how to use them. They both strip naked and get into the baths. Mark allows himself to sink into a state of relaxation and oneness with the forest, and it is in this moment that Kurt comes over and starts to massage his shoulders.
Just relax, man. Just settle in.
All right.
At first, Mark is startled. He tries to shake away and ask what he's doing, but Kurt tells him to relax. While initially uncomfortable, Mark finally allows himself to be at the same level as Kurt and reciprocate the kind of intimacy he is looking for, slowly sinking beneath the water in a state of pure bliss. Kurt wants a relationship with Mark that contradicts his form of masculinity and pushes the boundaries of platonic intimacy that many men are uncomfortable with. Intimacy, or queerness, is seen as the ultimate betrayal of masculinity and relinquishing of power, and Mark's sense of power is tested through an extremely intimate and slightly sensual setting with another man. But for one brief moment, he lets go of this barrier and finally meets Kurt on his level, reciprocating the vulnerability he has avoided for the entire film. E. Dawn Hall wrote of this scene, "While the moment is ambiguous, sensual imagery such as Mark's wedding banded hand slowly releasing its grip on his tub and falling into the water, followed by cascading water drops, running water down a long wooden gutter, bubbling waterfalls, and steam drifting out of the bathhouse, all indicate a deep connection between two friends. While the bathhouse scene is homoerotic, indicated by the release of tension in Mark and the sexualized images of nature after, it also illustrates Kurt's empowerment and implied responsibility for Mark's back-to-nature experience. The central crux of Old Joy lies not in whether they will rekindle their friendship, but if they will be vulnerable and honest with each other, despite their opposing lifestyles and values. While they might have found some middle ground, the friendship they once had cannot be saved, and the pair silently acknowledge this brutal truth during the final scene. By the end, we know that neither Kurt nor Mark is truly happy. From the opening scene, it doesn't seem as though Mark is in a particularly fulfilling marriage. He and his partner communicate in a short and slightly tense way, and we don't see either of them smile or interact with affection. He is trying to meditate in the garden in the opening scene, but interrupted by the sounds of the modern life, whether it be the phone ringing or blender blending. But on the outside, he's achieved the milestones of a traditional life and perhaps could never admit his dissatisfaction because he has what everyone is encouraged to achieve. While Kurt has freedom through not achieving these goals, it is clear that he is painfully lonely as a result. By the end, you see Kurt not as the anarchist free spirit, but as a high-functioning, very funny but deeply depressed person who really needed a weekend with his old friend. He was the one to reach out to Mark after a long period of distance, a stab at reconnection that is all too familiar to those who have struggled with depression, desperately trying to create connection with people to distract from your own sadness. But at the end of their trip, he is lonelier than ever in the knowledge that this friendship no longer exists. During the final scene in the car, Mark says that the weekend was amazing, a sentiment that we don't know is true or not. But Kurt doesn't reciprocate. He just says, "I'll call you." He knows that they probably won't see each other again, and their lives are about to become irreparably different after Mark becomes a father, something that will only deepen the divide between them. The final shot shows Kurt giving away his money to a homeless person and then crossing the road without looking. After many watches of the film, I now interpret this ending as Kurt killing himself. The weekend was his last attempt to feel something that tethers him to the earth, to reconnect with nature and the good old times of his youth. But nothing is quite the same anymore, and both men have been pushed apart by the same system. Directed in 2016, Certain Women is a collection of 3 short stories following the lives of 3 women living in rural Montana. One is a lawyer who struggles to appease a tricky client, the other a wife and mother whose construction of her dream home causes cracks in her marriage, and the other a lonely ranch worker who has an unrequited crush on a visiting law student. Much like the men in Old Joy, the women in Certain Women are seen as the personification of modern womanhood through having stable jobs and financial independence. Each of them is a certain type of woman, assertive, headstrong, and confident. However, many men are intimidated by women who possess this kind of independence, and as a result, they have slowly been ostracized and subject to the unique loneliness that comes from being a woman in a world where men don't listen to you. They are subconsciously resented by the men who feel emasculated in their presence, eventually subjugating these women in a new way by denying them something else: compassion, kindness, and the right to be truly seen. While capitalist logic tells us that financial independence is the key to our freedom, all of the women in this story are silently punished for reaching this definition of freedom, with Reichhardt using the male characters to highlight their loneliness. In the first story, Laura, played by Laura Dern, runs a legal practice and struggles with one tricky client who wrongly believes he can sue for an injury that destroyed his career. In retaliation to this injury, he holds hostage a security guard from his old firm, and Laura is left to pick up the pieces, being offered no real thanks or respect from him in return. He belittles her expertise and views her as a little more than a glorified therapist, only believing her legal advice after it is reiterated by a male lawyer. He continuously breaches the boundaries of the normal lawyer-client relationship, turning up at her office without an appointment, accosting her in her car, and acting as though he is entitled to all of her time, with no consideration towards the fact that she has other clients or a life of her own. Her humanity is diminished through the very limiting lens in which she is viewed by her client, something only compounded by her personal life. While love is one of the few ways we can assert our humanity and be truly seen, she must love in a limited and very secretive way due to the fact that she is having an affair with a married man. While she might have achieved the capitalist definition of success, she is constantly undervalued in her professional life, and in her personal life, she has to love in private with someone who can't commit. Gina, played by Michelle Williams, is building a house for herself and her family. She is the boss of a construction company and in a higher position of power than her husband. Throughout the film, we see her silently struggle with the obstacles that arise from being a woman in a male-dominated field. Her authority is met with hostility, and her husband is pointedly unsupportive at work due to his resentment of her power. But his role within the family unit is particularly interesting in highlighting Gina's lack of freedom and loneliness. Played by James LaGrosse, her husband is often seen lazing around and conveniently forgetting to complete any household tasks, leaving his wife to organise every aspect of their life, despite being extremely overworked and exhausted with the construction of their new home. He fakes gratitude and pretends to express concern over her state of frantic busyness, but he never does anything to alleviate her stress. He is also having an affair with Laura, which renders his concern completely hollow and insincere, as he is actively disrespecting her and their family. In addition to this, their teenage daughter makes snide remarks at her mother for being highly strung, often encouraging her father to join in on this light bullying and siding with him in every argument. It captures a uniquely insidious aspect of the gender dynamics within the nuclear family, with internalized misogyny often leading daughters to gang up on their mothers, even if they will one day experience the unfairness and invisibility of this role themselves. Bonnie Burstow beautifully captures this experience, writing, "Often father and daughter look down on mother women together. They exchange meaningful glances when she misses a point. They agree that she is not as bright as they are, cannot reason as they do. This collusion does not save the daughter from the mother's fate." Gina's isolation is furthered by the fact that her daughter always sides with her husband, denying her humanity while allowing for his to flourish. She is seen as a nag and a bore, while he is allowed to be the fun parent, because he has no responsibilities that negate his ability to be fun. The final man in the film is only seen for a few seconds, but highlights the root cause of loneliness for the third and final character. Jamie, played by Lily Gladstone, is queer and secretly pines for Beth, played by Kristen Stewart, a law student who visits town each week to teach. In comparison to Laura and Gina, Jamie is completely isolated in her day-to-day life, with no family, friends, or romantic partners that we see her interact with throughout the film. Through Jamie's identity as both a queer woman and Indigenous American, Reichardt comments on the combination of forces that not only lessen her economic freedom, but heighten her loneliness. She interacts with nobody but horses, who are the only living creatures that affirm her humanity in a colonized country that has pushed her to the fringes of society, being othered for both her sexual and ethnic identity. However, everything changes after forming a connection with Beth, somebody who gives her something to look forward to and alleviates her loneliness. But when she finally works up the courage to express her feelings, she's cut short after hearing that the man just out of frame is Beth's partner. Just when we think that one of these women might break away from loneliness, find love, and be truly seen, Beth is taken away from her, and by a man, no less. It ends with Jamie driving home alone as the woman she loves leaves her life forever. Despite achieving some form of independence, the world is not truly theirs or free for them to experience fully. The characters are trapped in a simulation of freedom, without being able to live authentically or for themselves. Much of their existence revolves around the labour that they are still required to perform for others, while also working full-time jobs and being resented for doing both. While love is the only redeeming aspect of such a cruel world, it is not obtainable for any of these women. They aren't treated as equals by the men around them, and there is nobody that truly sees them. Reichhardt also highlights the loneliness of each character through the expansiveness of the film's setting, with the vast landscape of rural Montana heightening their isolation and oppressiveness of the patriarchy. Despite being surrounded by the natural beauty of the mountains and forests, the disquieting emptiness of these spaces highlights the loneliness of their inner world. The film also takes place during the winter, adding to the bleakness of their reality as they silently persevere through the challenges of everyday life, with each character possessing an unnoticed strength and resilience that is needed to survive. By the end of the film, we know that none of these women are truly free. It ends with a vague epilogue that shows all the women feeding people. Laura brings food to her client, who is now in jail. Gina serves dinner to her family, to which her husband again pretends to show care over her by telling her to stop working, only to then ask if she can bring him a beer. Jamie continues feeding the horses at the ranch. There's a quiet acceptance from all of them that these outdated gender norms will never truly disappear, but will simply exist alongside the responsibilities of being modern working women. You might be a successful lawyer or businesswoman, but you will still be expected to put everyone before yourself, to put food on the table, to show kindness to others who will never reciprocate it, yet never complain of this unfairness. You must simply keep on carrying on. A common misconception of slow cinema is that the silence means nothing is happening, when in fact, a dense layer of emotion is being conveyed through an entirely different language. In Old Joy, the quiet of the forest emphasizes the pain of acknowledging a fading friendship. In Wendy and Lucy, the silence emphasizes the unique danger of being a woman without a home. In Certain Women, it highlights the loneliness of not being heard, seen, or appreciated by the people around you. But more than anything, the silence within these stories emphasizes the forces that have isolated these characters, dwelling in the tedious routines, discomfort, lack of kindness, tolerance of cruelty, and the loneliness of living within such a system. By confronting audiences with the small-scale tragedies that exist in the quiet spaces all around us, Reichardt creates a rare opportunity for us to sit with the unseen struggles of people who are doing their best to survive and assert their humanity, leaving us to reckon not only with the dehumanization caused by capitalism, but the demise of one crucial human skill. Compassion is a skill so essential to humanity that without it, we are dehumanized by the social structures of our world, with Reichardt forcing us to reckon with the collective death of compassion through our impatience with quieter stories and the realization that they largely go untold. We are increasingly uncomfortable with silence, and we fill it in every possible way we can. Some say that the eyes are the window to the soul, but I would disagree. Silence is the window to the soul. Sometimes you only truly know someone once you've experienced their silence and the moments that aren't being filled. Nothingness reveals the core of who you are, and when people have no patience for nothingness, something that fills and defines our everyday lives, Reichardt posits whether we have lost patience for humanity itself. While this critique is present in her work and our reaction to it, it is also exemplified by the fact that her films could only be made as an independent filmmaker. She teaches film at Bard University and earns just enough to support herself between projects, making a film every couple of years. While her films don't make much money, Reichardt is afforded something much greater than financial freedom: complete creative control. There is much to gain from being an independent filmmaker, something that is increasingly difficult to do in our current creative climate, but perhaps this way of working was adopted not only by choice, but by necessity. The studio model is not encouraging of slow cinema or the kinds of films that Reichardt makes. In fact, studios actively work to eliminate any trace of silence or slowness from their work, opting for a level of distraction and noise that mainstream audiences will be able to sit through. Most people visit the cinema as a distraction from anything reflecting real life, and a film that confronts audiences with these realities and encourages us to empathetically engage with them would not be tolerated by most audiences or create the revenue needed to satisfy any studio. Reichardt's choice to remain an independent filmmaker is inherent to her critique on our lack of compassion, because fundamentally, the studio model wouldn't allow for her stories to be shared. The studio system has become a circus of endless distraction, and we cannot stand the idea of being burdened by the daily struggles, sadness, resilience, and inconveniences of everyday life, qualities that light the crux of Reichardt's work. However, while her capitalist critique has been embedded within the loneliness of her characters and mode of filmmaking, she has added a new layer to this critique through her most recent films, Showing Up and The Mastermind, in which the audience itself is reflected in the main characters. While the thematic language of Reichardt's earlier films was perhaps more subtle, it has recently evolved into something more confrontational and slightly scathing, focusing on characters who are reluctant to connect with the world around them and see people as a distraction from their true purpose. Showing Up, directed in 2022, follows an artist called Lizzie as she prepares for a solo gallery exhibition, trying to find time to create but being inconvenienced by her broken shower, uncaring landlord, a time-consuming administrative job she doesn't care about, and an injured pigeon she has to nurse back to health. She lives in the middle of a creative community in Portland, surrounded by artists who seemingly don't have a care in the world and are able to sustain themselves without additional menial labour. To rub it in further, her landlord is also an artist, and the financial stability she gains from renting out her property allows her to focus solely on her creative passions, yet she never finds time to fix Lizzie's broken shower. But while Reichhardt once again criticises the systems that restrict our humanity, there is an additional layer to the story that explores the necessity of these inconveniences to the process of creating and life itself. Lizzie does not come across as a content person when she isn't working on her sculptures, with her presence being defined by strained sighs and scowls after being burdened by the struggles of her friends, family, and neighbours. But none of this matters when she is in her studio, with everything else melting away as she devotes precious hours to the art of making. But as Lizzie continues working on her sculptures, Reichhardt gently introduces the idea that these everyday mishaps and stresses are essential to the process of creativity, with each interaction and moment of connection gradually enriching her life and adding a new dimension to her perspective. Her life is touched by the unexpected moments of chaos that eventually reveal themselves to be beautiful, such as a simple sight of her new pet pigeon escaping from its shoebox in the art gallery, spreading its wings and flying towards the ceiling as the people below look upwards, completely transfixed by the simple absurdity of this sight, united in the brief anomaly of a moment. At first, Lizzie views everything as precious time taken away from her craft, not realising that the moments away from it are crucial in shaping her work, with each conversation, annoyance, and surprising encounter living in the traces of our stories. The chaos of an inconvenienced life can become a permanent source of contention and resentment, with many artists feeling burnt out and bitter about the trivial jobs they're forced to take to sustain their passions. But as much as it can feel like you are being tested through a constant stream of hurdles and the tedium of a 9-to-5 job, the inconvenience and struggle will quietly expand your understanding of the world, until one day, like a pigeon flying through an art gallery, it will all make glorious and absurd sense. Lizzie can be seen as a characterization of the audience itself, with Reichhardt criticizing those who cannot sit with silence and the importance of having patience for lives that aren't our own. Lizzie is somewhat selfish with her time and reluctant to connect with the people around her, but once she allows herself to be touched by their pain, discomfort, and perspective of the world, it infuses meaning into her work in a way she couldn't achieve on her own. Inconvenience is essential not only to form community, but to give us purpose and enrich our lives. It is only when we realise that inconvenience is not a burden but a gift that we can see the way it has forever altered our unique tapestry of experience. In many ways, this critique is also extended to The Mastermind, although in a slightly different way as the only film of Reichardt's that centres around one male character. Much like Lizzie, Mooney has tunnel vision and is obsessed by one goal, to pull off an art heist and steal a famous collection of paintings. While his intentions behind this seem murky, we later learn that it's something of a revenge scheme towards his old art professor after failing his degree, stealing his favourite paintings just to spite him. Unlike Lizzie, his mission is entirely selfish. If he achieves his goal, the outcome cannot be shared with anyone else, and not only this, but he is jeopardising his family through the risk of him going to jail. His goal helps absolutely nobody, yet he hones all his attention towards himself and his purely egotistical mission. As a man, he doesn't have the same responsibilities as Lizzie that force him to connect with the people around him, with women far more often being tasked with caring for others. He's a father, but we rarely see him interact in any meaningful way with his kids. He rarely helps his wife, who exists quietly in the background and is forced to take on all the domestic labour. He often borrows money from his parents and makes no effort to get a real job, despite their insistent encouragement that he do so as a qualified architect. We also know that his dad is a high-ranking judge, and when questioned by the police about the heist, he uses this privilege to deflect their accusations, saying that his accomplice was probably somebody who had been incarcerated by his dad and seeking revenge. As a period piece set in 1970, Reichhardt also frames the pettiness of his goals against the wider political movements of the time. Mooney is impervious to the protests taking place against the Vietnam War, a genuinely important cause that would be far more worthy of his undivided attention. But instead, he uses this to his advantage, robbing an old woman and then evading capture by joining a crowd of protesters. The Mastermind is arguably Reichardt's most scathing film, showing a character who is unable to remove himself from his own perspective and the consequences of living this way, with Mooney ending up completely alone after abusing the kindness of everyone he knows and shortly being captured by the police. While Lizzie eventually embraces the presence of the people around her and is profoundly changed by doing so, Mooney is a lost cause. He is the ultimate cautionary tale, showing what happens to those who focus solely on their own lives and refuse to acknowledge the humanity and complexity of other people, unaffected by the lives orbiting around them and the human ties that make them one and the same.
Betty came by on her way, said she had a word to say.
The silence within Reichardt's work speaks to those who sit with it on an almost subliminal level. It's a stillness that weighs on your mind and forms a deep well of thought, growing deeper the more you gaze into it. Whether it be through Wendy and Lucy, Old Joy, or Certain Women, Reichhardt demands that we connect our place in the world to the lives around us, to feel our way through other people and remind ourselves of the bigger picture. To the everyday heroes we look away from, the people who live entirely alone, and those who carry everyone else's problems without asking for anything in return. When describing Reichardt's work, Hope Dickson Leach said, "We must remind ourselves that we are all human, that one person's life affects another, and that there is no straightforward way of seeing something. We can't fully understand the truth of anything by looking from one angle. We can't understand the world by only looking at the experience of the people making the headlines. We need to look beyond, to the voices excluded but affected nonetheless." Through her work, Reichhardt has created a new cinematic hierarchy that prioritizes the unseen everyday moments, creating an intimate bubble where we sit with those on the outskirts and briefly live with their burdens, in the hope that we'll extend this gaze to real-life people who carry the same load. To connect with these stories is to deliberately evade boredom, to make the choice to be still with ourselves and what we see. Maybe the loneliness of Reichardt's characters is created not through the story, but through our inability to sit with it. But if we allow ourselves to do this, we can alleviate the loneliness of those who have been pushed away, embrace our shared silence, and briefly look at the world through the same lens.
You gotta give to get, you gotta give to get back, you gotta give to get, you gotta give to